Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the next episode of Breath of Life Conversations. I'm so glad that you're here. Today's guest is actually a student of mine, and she wanted to come on here after finishing up a course with me, actually. And I was actually quite surprised that she wanted to come on. But then when we were talking about what it is that she wanted to discuss, I was like, of course, like it makes complete sense to have this discussion. So today we're going to be talking about the everyday practical ways in which we can connect to our intuition. And I think that this is a really good conversation to have because number one, I think so many individuals come into intuition from kind of these like either higher intellectualized places like are there such things as life outside our planet and outside of our galaxy? So, that star beings place, the place of, what was Atlantis like, or what was Lemuria like, or what was ancient Egypt like? Um, or they're coming at it from this place of like trauma and getting over one's childhood, forgiveness, and like these things that are quite deep. And uh when we talk about intuition, like coming to it, it all always kind of starts from this dark night of the soul. And we don't really acknowledge necessarily that there are individuals, one, who um, are coming at this not from a place of like desperation or anything like that, but just utter curiosity and how that plays. But also let's say somebody does come at it from this kind of dark night of the soul. Sometimes we it takes us a minute to find our teachers and the people that we consider soul family and tribe. And so the question then becomes, well, okay, if I happen to be on my own about this, how do I do it? What are the touchstones? What are the things that we need to do in order to um get in touch with our intuition and to practice it? And so that is what me and my next guest are going to talk about. So let me welcome Miriam. Miriam, how are you?
I'm doing great.
So tell me how it is that you particularly get in touch or got in touch like at the beginning. Like what was it that one kind of like drew you to intuition? Like why was that like a thing?
Okay. So, I mean, now that I look back, it was a kind of like a path of a lot of different little things. But I would say when I really decided to go in and get support and really like see how far I can go with what my intuition was telling me was because of business. I was having a really challenging time with a particular real estate business, and just dealing with individuals and really not protecting my energy. And that is where I had the realization of, wow, this intuitive work, this energy work is not just in one-on-one sessions with therapy clients, because in therapy I would set really clear boundaries they teach us. And that kind of helped with like, okay, boundaries, protecting my energy. Sometimes I wouldn't call it energy, but I would cleanse. Like we had these therapy rooms where it was like we had to block off therapy rooms. So we would go from one therapy room straight to the next one. You would try to leave at least 10 minutes, but when you're in session with someone, right, and they're telling you like really intense, um, experiences, you sometimes, you can't just cut them off. So anyway, I would go from one room to the next and I would do like a little cleanse and I would do like a little shake to kind of release. And that was more so for back then, it was more to because I didn't want to take that situation to the next client. It wasn't so much for myself. It was a little bit for myself. It was more of that, like, okay, let's just close this up. We're leaving this right here in this room and we're moving on to the next. Anyway, so I was doing some of that in therapy. And back then, I had a really good mentors that were a little bit into energy work, but I used to think like, what is that? That is so weird. Why are we cleansing? Like, why are we, doing, all the things that I do now? And so then when business was a challenge and I was noticing how a particular situation and individual was affecting me in my personal life and in my space, then that's when I really started noticing that I can go into my intuition. I can journal. I could find simple ways to connect with myself, and that, and at the same time, my children were starting to talk and verbalize, and they're very intuitive. And so I felt like I owed it also to them for me to really learn about this so that I can support them and continue to support them. So, yeah, that's a little bit in a nutshell. Of course, there are a lot of other things that happened, but that is when I really just like went in, and here we are.
I love that it wasn't because of some like big traumatic event, like it wasn't because of some big trauma or, like a dark night of the soul sort of thing, because we hear about that all the time. And yes, it is it one way in which to like have this kind of eye-opening awareness of one's intuitive abilities or psychic abilities, however it is that we want to say that, right? But
Right.
there are those of us that are, come to that idea of, okay, what else is there and how, what else about me is there and how can I go deeper in and all of that stuff. And so I love that your story isn't necessarily quote unquote that like typical, thing. It wasn't this like dark, dreary, depressing moment that drove you. It was like I had these things that were happening in my life and I wanted to be able to show up better.
Hmm.
And whether that be as a mom, as a business owner, as a wife, whatever it might be, but it was like these are these moments in my life that are going to happen regardless. And
Right.
so it really, I think, lets people know that like your life doesn't have to suck for
Hmm.
you to get into this and have it be really useful. So what for you was kind of like the one of the first things that you found yourself doing to connect to your intuition?
So with all that was happening, right? And I kind of, it wasn't, it's sometimes we fight this. We fight the intuition, we fight the things that are coming up. And what I mean we fight them is that, like how you're saying, because it wasn't like such a like an incident or traumatic event, or like I have friends that I've talked to where there's like a severe illness or like something that from one day to the next kind of started this. Because of that, then you're just like, well, I'm just comfortable in my daily life with what I'm doing. And yes, I'm noticing this, but um, I am not really giving it all of my attention. So, what really started what you're saying, while all this was going on, I was starting to have symptoms. And by symptoms, I mean some discomforts, like no medical condition, but more of like I was having migraines. And there wasn't really an explanation for it. I was having just trouble sleeping, and some anxiety for sure, and just feeling not like myself. And that's really where what I started doing was going inward. Of course, I, went to the doctors. I'm not one that goes to the doctors for everything. And I am in dialogue with them. And I've always been really attuned to my body. And I obviously teach, in therapy, I would teach people to do that all the time as well. So I had the techniques and all of that, but it's just a different level of going inward and more consistently with this intuitive work. And then that's when I started looking for individuals that I would connect with in this world already, like professionally. And so that's how I contacted you many years ago. I think I heard you speak on a podcast and it just kind of like stayed with me. And then, then when the time is right, I reached out to you and it was really like a validation of one that I was doing all the things medically, like not medically, but just to take care of myself,
Mhm.
right? Because I remember you told me when we did a reading, I remember you said, "Well, there's really nothing that I see here like major, you know?"
Yeah. Yep.
Like, why did you
I don't
reach
get to say
out?
that often to people either. So when I do, I'm like always really excited because I'm like, great, this is perfect. Because I think people wait too long sometimes, and people think that, well, they get used to the fact that the modern medical system is all about, like, keeping people sick or like only interacting with people when they're sick. And I actually am like, great, you're healthy. Let's go. Let's like get into
Right.
the nitty gritty
So
of
I
it.
remember
Yeah.
that. But I mean, for me, it was just like, okay, great. Like, thank you for validating that. That's wonderful. Now, what else can I do to, I guess I was already doing the work. And I think in mental health, with any profession, you can say you want to do something and do it and not really do the work internally, right? I've met many therapists that, not to judge, but, when I get a client that is doing their master's for mental health, I say the best work you can do is do the work on yourself. Analyze your family, analyze how you were brought up, your behaviors, like while you're learning all of this, do it on yourself because that is the greatest asset for yourself and for your clients. So then when this intuitive work started happening with this intuitive like awakening, I guess, I reached out to someone like you because I wanted to understand the symptoms that I was having. They were concerning, right? Because they were interfering with my everyday life. And also, oh, this is another thing that had came up more recently when I talking about the physical, the body response. I was having a lot of heart um palpitations and like running out of breath. When I was now in retrospect, that was when I was actually kind of really connecting intuitively. And it was like my heart was like wanting to do it, but like family wise and socially, I was like, oh my gosh, am I really doing this? Am I really coming out as doing this? Even though people already knew that I was already into this intuition and I talked about it all the time, but differently. So now in retrospect, I know that that's what it was. Like I was speaking, I needed to speak my truth. I needed to speak my truth more openly with my partner, with my family. And once I did that, it was like beautiful. Like I was very lucky that I was I've been in a supportive environment where everyone is just like, oh yeah, this is what you do. This is who you are, right? But that was another way what you're saying. What did you start doing? Well, I started doing all of that, exploring like where is this coming from? What's coming up? And that's what I teach my clients. Like instead of running away from, these symptoms, like get curious about them. And there are a lot of practical ways that you can do it. I mean, I'm busy, I have two children. My parents, I support my parents a lot with their doctor's appointments and things like that. And I'm married and we have businesses and so all of that. And so it could be overwhelming, but that's what I want people to know, that there are practical ways in everyday life that you can start connecting with your intuition. And I started looking for people, like I said. So I saw some people that I could relate to, that I can identify with. And you were one of them. And not just your style, because everyone has a different style. Even in therapy, when I would assign therapists, I would say, just because you didn't like that therapist doesn't mean that there's not another one that might be a better fit for you. And I used to do that a lot in therapy. I used to like to assign therapists because I felt like I had a way of connecting with people and see like, okay, this client needs maybe this therapist who's maybe a little bit more nurturing in this sense. This client has already been to therapy. They need more of that therapist that's going to be really straightforward and really challenge them faster. And that's what I liked about your style because, I don't have time to waste. So I, picked up on your energy right away. I'm like, okay, I need to hear it. I need accountability. I need someone that is definitely way ahead of me in this energy work. And it's going to support me, but also, tell me, hey, Miriam, like, you know, are you ready for this or not? Because it's here. And
And that's hard too, especially like you said, when you're busy and sometimes it's easy to say, "Oh, well, I'll deal with it later," or I'll push it to the side, being like, "I need to like prioritize." And one of the things that I think that you understood really quickly was, and maybe it was from your therapy background or just because it's who you are or a combination of both, is you being healthy and you being in touch and you having all of the tools that you need in order to be your best self actually makes you better for everyone else. And so by saying, I just like give it to me straight and let's run, if I trip and I fall, that's fine. I can get back up. But, let's just do it. And it wasn't about anything else for you, that like other than having that focus of like I just want to get to be the best that I want to be, and finding those like practical practices was really really helpful for you because it allowed for you to actually run, to
Mhm.
actually be able to stay curious and to reach your goals. So for you, can you talk about like the difference between the beginning of your journey versus where you see yourself now, as like um in relation to the actual practices that you had? So like if you kind of go back to like the beginning of your journey and say, okay, these are the practical practices that I use to get in touch with my intuition then, and then now looking at your practices now, have they changed at all? And if so, how or in what ways?
Yeah, I mean, I can go more in detail, but maybe I can do both. Like generally, for someone, I can speak to someone that maybe is just starting, for example. And then someone that's just starting, and I can look at how I was before. I guess one is just first getting curious about it, right? And not feeling like you have to figure it all out at once. Just starting to, I would start noticing synchronicities, for example, and I would speak of them like this is what it is. This is what it is. It's a message, and or past loved ones, dreams, or little things that I would find. And this is what it is. And so that's kind of how it started, noticing like this is how it is. And I didn't really spend time too much in like meditation on my own. I would do like guided visualizations and meditations that I would follow, because I really didn't know exactly what I was doing at that point. Um, and so I started first just noticing the little things in my everyday life that were happening, like synchronicities again, and messages or signs, I guess, right? And then more of how it is now is I actually have my rituals that I do daily, um, weekly, some things monthly, and continuously, consistently. And though that is what adds, and it changes all the time. Like there's maybe a meditation that I'm doing, for some time, and then maybe I'm adding something else. Um, I used to
Can you
go
give some
out.
examples of like
Mhm.
what you would add?
Yeah, so for example, now, like I was gonna just mention right now, like I've always liked to go out on runs or walks, right? Like I've always
Mhm.
enjoyed that, and just waking up in the morning to do that. Before I would do it more so to take care of my body, and to kind of just have some time away. It was more like a physical, not physical, but like I wanted to lose weight, and that was like my little alone time, right? This was years ago when I had my kids were younger. Now it's developed to, this is my time to be on my own. To, for example, this morning I said, okay, this is my, I'm going to do a higher self walk and I'm going to connect with my higher self. I'm going to ground, which is normally what I do in the mornings, but sometimes it could be, literally like 3 minutes that I have, or sometimes it could be like today, it was like a good 45 minutes to an hour where I said, I'm just going to connect with my higher self, with my body, and my, and just see what comes up. And of course, your mind is like, oh, I have to do this and I have to do that, and then oh, I want to post this for so and so. It's like, nope, we're doing the work just for yourself today, this morning. You can, and then going back to that. Because I'm such a giver that I have my challenge sometimes is that I'm experiencing something and automatically it's like, oh, I want to share this with someone. No. Bedtime also routines are so important for me to be able to clear my energy. I've been doing them with the kids now, also with my boys, and just I recorded one of my meditations and I just last night, right now it's like a time of a lot of chaos. We have like performances for the school. We have just extras. And there's a lot of like, viruses and like people are stressed and like, and so I was like, okay, you guys, the best thing we could do is like take care of our body, like in our immune system. And this is a good way to do this. So let's, do the a heart meditation of gratitude and clear our energy for the night. And so that's something that I do nightly. And now I've included the kids in doing it too. And they've responded really well, especially the older one was like, I did it with him like, I don't know, like 3 months ago already for the first time, the actual, oh no, I actually verbalized it to him. And then he was like, Mom, that was so good. You need to record this and share it with people. And I was like, oh, I will.
And that's amazing too. I feel like it's a lot easier too when we're on this journey, and particularly when we're looking at how can we make this just a everyday part of our lives. It's harder for people when we feel like we have to hide it from our families, or when it can't be something that we're doing necessarily openly. um and so it's easier, I feel like, when our families can be brought into it. And particularly nowadays, there's a lot of kids that need stuff like this, that need it for helping to, regulate their nervous systems, to resetting, to getting better
Yeah,
sleep, to being more productive in school. Like, I mean, we've got study after study after study, from the social sciences and from neuroscience and all of that, showing how pivotal, and from whole countries doing this, with kids in schools. So it's
right.
beautiful to have this kind of like, kill two birds with one stone. Not only do you help from a physical standpoint and from a mental and cognitive standpoint by doing things like this and having this very practical practice that you can do every day,
Mm-hmm.
but also having it be a beautiful way for kids to be introduced to intuition. And of course, well, it's more like killing three birds with one stone, doing your own personal practice and not
Right,
having it take away from other areas of your life. It makes it this very immersive practice
right.
that feels very doable. I love that you
Doable.
mentioned doing something physical as a very practical way to get in touch with your intuition, because I think that so many people don't realize that it can be movement. You don't have to sit, because I think I've spoken to so many individuals that say, I can't meditate. I can't sit down and meditate for 10 minutes, much less 30 minutes. But you're saying that some of those practical things can be things that you do every day anyway.
Right. And yes, and that is one of the things that I love teaching. And that's what in my energy readings, like I try to see, just like when mental health, like you assess a person and then you're going to give them skills. Like I was trained in various different therapies, doesn't mean that I was going to do the same therapy on every client that walked through the door. No, like it was my bag of tools, right? The same with energy work. It's like I help individuals depending on what their lifestyle is, depending on their experiences, how open they are to actually doing a transformation or a change. For example, my gym workouts are a time for me to also like check in with my intuition. Yes, I have a trainer, but I also picked a trainer that is not talking to me like 24/7 and is not asking me, about my day and my month and so she knows like if I'm locking in, I'm locking in. And I do get downloads during my workouts sometimes, and that's a time where I am connected intuitively, right? And so that's like a perfect example in movement. Yes, one of the first times that I actually was trying to do an energy reading, I was kind of doing like what you're saying, like the sitting, and like it wasn't coming through. And I just got up and I started moving around, and I was like, there's something wrong with me moving around. Like I'm just like, I'm too tense. My ego is like taking over this. I need to really move around. And that's when I was able to connect. And so that's what I tell people. I post things about my workouts, but that doesn't mean that that's what it should look like for everyone. It actually, it should, you shouldn't look at that thinking like, oh, I should do that exact thing. It's just like an idea of how to do the mindset work while you're working out. And I have done some wellness events that have, to kind of in therapy, I would, sit with clients because that's just kind of how it was. And then when I did private for an organization, right, like a business, like we didn't have that much flexibility. Although my teens, I would ask for permission to take them for like a drive sometimes, or to go for a little walk and go to Starbucks and things like that to get them to talk, right? But other than that, you're in a room, and yes, you can do some activities with your client, but you're not really getting them to move. So, for it to be a full body experience, I think it's so important to include the body. I always tell my clients like we're great problem solvers, we're go-getters, and so we spend a lot of time up here, and it's no wonder that like someone just reached out to me a few days ago and they're like, I feel like brain fog, like I'm fine, but like I feel like there's so much. And I'm just like, okay, let's connect with your body. There's a whole body underneath, like wiggle your toes, like, let's ground, let's do some of that. So we spend so much time up here. And so these wellness events that I've been doing, it's been like a way to help people in the moment to connect their mind, body, and energy. And so what I'm hoping to do in these events is that I'm helping them find like within an hour and a half, like a quick way for them to move their body, connect, raise their frequencies, and then out they go, to the Saturday of like full of activities or whatnot, right? But see, it's just like a simple way to start teaching individuals you have the ability to do it and to start doing daily because a lot of my clients either are they're wanting these big goals, and which is great, right? And we're working on them. A lot of them already have the goals, but when you actually they know that they're not taking care of themselves, right? And that's on the back of their mind. And so it's just a matter of time, unfortunately, for it to catch up with them. And sometimes it does catch up with them. And I'm sure you've seen this, right? This is your bread and butter, right?
Yep.
And so yeah, so I've always been very much of prevention, prevention, prevention. I worked with little kids, I worked with parents for many years in mental health, and I've always thought like, wow, how like it was prevention, right? Before they get older, like what can we do? And now it's at a different level. Now it's like, how can we start working with them with their energy before it gets to a different level I guess, of medical necessity, I guess, if we're talking, you know, medical needs. But yeah, so does that make sense?
Yeah. Can we? like talk now about other ways. So we've gone into this idea of movement, and of course we talked a little bit about meditation, just as saying like if that is a part of your routine, that's an excellent way to tap in. But what are some other ways that you found or that you tell your clients that these are just
Yeah.
practical everyday things? Like
So
what's the
sometimes I have
list?
clients that, I mean, it could be really simple. Sometimes I have clients that tell me, Miriam, I really don't have time. Like, I don't have time to myself. I don't have time. And I tell them, well, you're going to shower, right? Like, at some point. Okay, well, the shower, let's try to then now make it an intention, like setting an intention that we're going to release, we're going to cleanse your energy in the shower. We're going to let go of what you needed to let go. And we're going to raise your frequency that way, right? You're going to wash the dishes today at some point, right? Or, um, okay, let's like take a mindful moment and set an intention that you're going to connect with your senses. What are you feeling the water, hot or cold? What are you smelling? What are you, take your shoes off while you're washing the dishes and feel the ground. How does it feel? And I had one client that I told that to, and she said she came back to me later on and so it's like, I've never felt the floor the way I felt it. Like after I took my shoes off, I'm like, yes, that's what I want. I want you to start connecting, grounding. Um, Journaling is a great way to, and a simple way to do that. I just did a wellness event where I gave individuals, first we did like a visualization, a clearing, and then we did journal prompts of in setting intentions for the holidays. And then we did a sound bath. And during the sound bath, I said, feel free to whatever comes up, journal it during, before, after, sometimes people feel like they don't have anything, like they're like, I don't know what to journal. I can give them prompts, or I can just say, just start scribbling. Just start scribbling. I mean, that's also a form. Start scribbling, doing some designs, and then just see what, or actually right there, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to journal, and then see what comes up. Like you can, there's no one's going to look at this. It's not a test. It's not like, so just start journaling. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm feeling tired. And then you'd be surprised at what starts flowing after that. Um, and also, sometimes just, I've done a lot of, connecting with yourself again. I live in a beautiful area where I have mountains. We're very blessed. Finding beauty, finding things to look at in nature is a great way to connect with your intuition. Some people are like, well, I don't have that outside. Well, you have a plant that you can look at. You have a flower that, like, I get excited over, like I have these roses outside of my house that, like, I'm like the worst at like maintaining these things, right? These plants and flowers, I'm the worst, but I've made an intention recently to really watch them bloom and to take care of them. And I literally walk out of my door and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, hi, look at you, little one. And I'm just like literally talking to the rose and smelling it on my way out of the house. And that is just like, I am connecting a full body experience. Like I'm looking, I'm smelling, I'm touching, right? Like I am already, and it's literally changing my mood. Um, I've worked a lot with teachers, and teachers talk about not having time, right? Teachers in the
Mhm.
classroom with little ones talk about not having time, but of course they're human and they're teaching little ones, and a lot of the times their own personal stuff was coming up for them in the classroom, and so I would tell them, okay, let's have like bring a scent, like something that you can smell, that you can just engage and like just take some mindful breaths. That is something that I used to do when I used to drop off my first child at daycare, and I was like in the morning, like, let's go, and and I'm going to be late for work, and the teacher had this little candle, I don't even know what it was, like of a lavender. And I literally would just like, okay, the child is in. we checked them in, and like she had it right there on the little sign-in sheet, and I would just grab it and then just like take two like deep breaths, and literally that was like a reset like no other. I mean, and that was just like a minute literally, and it was just like a little reset. So that's something that I teach for like teachers, for example, that can't even take a break, like leave the classroom because they're obviously like needing to keep their eyes on the kids. Put a little lotion of your favorite scent, or like the little things, the little balms that they have right here. Your coffee or tea that you can have. Go to the bathroom, take a break, and wash your hands. And like not just wash your hands for, for the cleanliness of it, but like wash your hands with the intention of you're releasing, you're resetting. So a lot of these things are intentions, intentions, intentions. Like, and that's a really simple way also setting an intention. I mean, I can today on my drive to, set an intention that I'm gonna open up the sunroof. I'm just thinking like, and the sun's gonna come through and I'm just like getting the light and the rays and the frequencies. And here we go. That's all I have time for from here to my next meeting.
And I love all of these too because like you said, they're all practical, they're all simple, they're all things that you're going to be doing in your everyday anyway. And all that is required is by setting the intention, and by setting that intention, you're changing something that is very rote or mundane into a mini ritual in a lot of ways. But what I can also hear people thinking is like, how is any of this actually me connecting to my intuition? Like, yes, like, okay, Miriam, I'm washing my hands. I set the intention. I'm going to be releasing. But how does this have anything? What does this have anything to do with my intuition? What is something that you would say to somebody who's not seeing the connection between
Mm-hmm.
releasing the bad juju from interaction that you just had in the bathroom to actually connecting to one's intuition?
Yeah, definitely. So one, I would say, before I start explaining what, how, but to be patient, it's not just going to happen all of a sudden. And people feel like because they would do one thing, all of a sudden they're like going to be listening to their intuition at all times, or that it's somehow goes away and comes back. It's always there, right? But by taking a moment to pause to regulate your nervous system, because this is what we're doing, right? We're regulating our nervous system, we're pausing, and we're opening ourselves to the possibility of listening to what needs to come through, listening inward. You're connecting with your body, which is your biggest intuitive, indicator. And you're just the simple fact of pausing is you're giving yourself an ability to connect with your intuition, whether that day it might be in a form of like something you hear, something you see, um, the phone call that comes after that. I don't know, like there's so many different ways. So you're just kind of setting yourself up for the possibility of what you're needing next. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, and realizing that one's ability to hear a higher version of themselves, whether that be just their higher, like if you want to call that your higher self, if you want to call that your God self, your goddess self, God, creator, universe, whatever it might be, or your angels, right? Or your guides,
mhm.
you have to find a place of quiet and in order for those voices to come in, because too often our internal monologue is so chaotic and it's so loud. And by doing these practices the way that you are talking about them, setting the intention and then doing it, you're giving yourself the opportunity to quiet our own personal inner monologue so that we can hear the messages from the versions of ourselves that
Yeah.
are not there to judge us, that's there to help us, that wants us to achieve a higher functionality or a higher frequency or
Right.
a better life in general. And when we then hear those things coming through, then we can start to trust them and we can
Right.
start acting on
hmm
them.
Right,
And
exactly.
that can lead to other things.
Right. That
You
can
know,
lead
some
to
of those
other things.
more
And the
like
better
woo-woo
you,
things.
yeah, and the better you get at it, the faster it gets. Right. And I think we've had this conversation where you're just like, you're just going through all these lessons faster and faster. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so right. Like I am, now making sense where in the past, maybe I would start journaling about maybe it's, for example, my blood pressure or like my heart palpitations, and I would journal about it, and something would come up of like, well, you need to speak from the heart, and you need to, and I was just like, but that's not it. Like there has to be like that's it. But it's easier said than done, right? Like I was reading and I wasn't trusting it. And then when I actually made a plan to how I was going to communicate all of this, and actually did it, and like shortly after, like my body responded, like meaning everything went away, right? So that's like a perfect example of how it builds, I guess, right? It builds. Like for me, starting to trust, check in with my intuition, to then trusting it, to then actually like, okay, we don't have to deal with that. And like, what's next? There's always something that's next.
Right. And that just allows for us to be able to create this reality that we want.
Yeah, there's so many things that have happened since I started doing this intuitive work, that so many things that have happened that I am just like I can't even believe um where I was before when I wasn't trusting as much of my intuition. Like there's just so many things that have happened since that I just can't even believe. And even with my partner, like I would tell him things like, oh yeah, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. This is what we're going to do. And he would literally say, no, there's no way, and don't get me wrong, I was so used to that style that I would his words would also affect me, like, oh, but maybe it's not, like maybe. And then there was a point where was trusting my intuition so much I was like, nope, this is going to happen. And now he understands that, like, oh yeah, yeah, this is going to happen. He's more open to it, because when you start doing this work, the beautiful thing about it is that the people around you you're modeling basically, and you're modeling. And so if anything else, because I ended up making a business out of this, right? But because it just worked out that way. But if anything else, what has came, what would have, what, if anything else, what came out of this was like me modeling this for my loved ones around me, and seeing them connect with their intuition or make sense of things or signs, or just talking the talk of like how we use the terms now. I'm just like, oh, like that is the greatest gift um for me to continue to do the work.
Love this conversation. I feel like we could go into 1,000 different directions from this, but I wanted to like us stay like very focused. So we're definitely, you're always welcome back on the podcast if there is something else that you're like, we have to talk about this. But I love this because I feel like this is so often I know that I don't get to speak to some of those, like finer earlier points, and they're so essential. Everybody's on on different journeys, but we all have to start somewhere. And for anybody who is sitting here going, I just don't know where to start. You
Right.
guys, Miriam has given some really amazing, clear, practical ways to begin. And certainly, if she is resonating with you, if this is something that you want to know more about, go down to the show notes, check out the links. You will find the places to follow her, as well as ways that you can work with her as well. Miriam, thank you so much, my love, for coming on and
Thank
being here.
you. This was fun. Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone, join us next time for the next Breath of Life conversations. Bye, y'all.